One other quick media story we wanted to sneak in here, even though it's already a long show and I still have
Yes,
monologue to
sorry.
do. But obviously, Donald Trump went on with Joe Rogan. Rogan, in that interview, we showed you, Trump brought up Kamala, and Rogan kind of defended her and was like, no, I still want to have a conversation with her. Like, I'm still hoping that may happen.
I bet he does want to have Kamala on. Like I said, I'm not going to shrink away from my prediction that Kamala will show up on Rogan before the election. I always had the caveat that it's possible that she won't show up because the negotiation with the details of you know how they are, how they have to craft everything to make Kamala look. They teach her, make sure when you step out of a car, you step with your right foot first. Stepping with your right foot, the analytics show that that's a person of power steps out of a vehicle with their right foot first. Stepping out with your left foot is a sign of weakness. So make sure you always step out with your right foot. It's like the weirdest stuff. They have to craft everything to be like exactly by the book and by the rules. So you think Kamala can go in there and just speak freely with Joe Rogan for 3 hours? Absolutely not. That's not possible. And I always said that that's the thing that's holding it up. I did also say that he had Trump on begrudgingly because the talks with Spot. I don't know. I don't like to play dumb. Okay, and I don't know everything either. But I'm telling you, Joe Rogan did not want to have Trump on. There was no reason for him to budge at all about having Trump on. He's saying that once he got shot, then he changed his mind. That's dumb. That doesn't even make any sense. Anyway, the reason he had Trump on is to save face because the talks with Kamala's camp was already happening with Spotify. I'm not going to shrink away from it. Kamala's camp was contacting Joe. Joe, I guarantee you told Spotify there's no way I can do that or even consider that unless I have Trump on. Spotify said, okay, fine, because we want to have Kamala on. Go ahead, schedule your Trump interview. So he had Trump come on while they continue talks with Kamala's team. I promise you, because the big money is going to come from Kamala's team. So Spotify is really looking to get paid from Kamala's team and have that interview happen because that's where their allegiances lie. So Trump came on. I'm not going to shy away from the prediction. I still think she'll come on before the election if Joe Rogan will budge. As you can see from this article here, Joe Rogan is objecting to that they want him to travel to her, and so she doesn't have to go to the studio in Austin. And then she also, which I think is reasonable. I think Joe in this, even though because she's actually in office right now, and actually the vice president at a in a White House that's not being led by anyone, clearly not Joe Biden. He's not even there most of the time. He's on vacation 50% of his term. But, I get that she might be busy, especially with Joe really stepping down. Not that he ever stepped up, but, I can see her being busy. So it's the cutting it down to 1 hour is rough because that leaves Joe that puts Joe on guardrails. That puts Joe on a train track, and it's not going to let him veer away from anything and just have a normal conversation. So get this, Kamala's team wants it to be a crafted, perfect visit with Joe Rogan, and they want to make it so Joe Rogan can't do the things that Joe Rogan does that makes Joe Rogan's podcast what it is. They want to they want to neuter him and make sure that he's only allowed to do what they basically are allowing him to do. I promise you, they're every question he's going to ask has to be vetted, or she won't do it. I feel like ultimately they're not going to come to terms, and they're not going to have the podcast. That doesn't mean I'm changing my prediction. I still strongly believe Trump came on because Kamala's team was in negotiation with Spotify. And that's why Rogan pushed to have Trump on because he knew he could never have Kamala on without having Trump on first. Period. We'll see. We'll see if they get it done. I don't see Joe Rogan caving to their demands. It's not the traveling. It's the 1 hour. It's the keeping it to 1 hour. And I promise you, they're not, maybe they're not openly talking about what they're demanding happens within that 1 hour. But I promise you, there's more things they're demanding, not just the 1 hour. It's Joe Rogan's telling you in this article that it's the 1 hour thing's really bothering me. I just want to get to know her as a human being. Yeah, we would all like that, Joe, but that's not going to happen. The Democrats don't allow that. They roll us by committee. They roll us by a faceless group of people in a room that come to a decision based on all 12 of their opinions. They don't roll with a single person. They roll by committee. That's how they work.
He tweeted this out as an update. He says, for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her. They only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do it is in the studio in Austin. My sincere wish is to just have a nice conversation, get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make it happen. What's your reaction, Sagar?
Well, twofold. I get him wanting to do it in the studio in Austin, but with this close to the election, it may not be possible, and it would be worth, in my opinion, compromising a little bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with him here. I think it's definitely very well worth it for Rogan to compromise. Just like I just said, I agree with him here that on breaking points that um I'd almost never agree with Crystal Ball. She's terrible, but the other guy, or what's his name? Cigar, is that how do you say his name? Whatever. Him, I find myself halfway agreeing with him on some things. He's still ridiculous, but I try to take my news from both sides. I really do. Um, but I agree with him. I think it's worth it for Rogan. It's not the traveling. Rogan's willing to travel. It's the 1 hour thing. I'm telling you, it's not Rogan's telling us without telling us the details just by saying they want to cut it to 1 hour means they're telling him how they want the conversation to go. That's not how Rogan does things. I At that point, what's the point of even doing the Rogan podcast if you're not going to do the Rogan podcast? You can't say Kamala Harris on the Joe Rogan Experience when it's not really the Joe Rogan Experience. It's going to be Joe Rogan interviewing a political leader and a candidate for president. Just Joe Rogan just doing an interview for some reason. He's not a reporter. He's not an interviewer. He's a podcaster. Go on the podcast and do the podcast, or don't. Either nut up and do the podcast, Kamala, or don't do it. But like I said, these conversations are in place because of what happened. Rogan having Trump on opened up the door for him to openly talk about Kamala coming on. If Trump wasn't on and Rogan was talking about this stuff with Kamala, his viewers would be destroying him right now for even mentioning Kamala coming on the podcast before he had Trump on. His viewers would have revolted. So that's why Trump came on. Rogan didn't change his mind. He didn't come to Trump's aid to help him or do anything because he got shot. It's none of that. It's money. It's Spotify being offered a bag of money from the Kamala camp, Kamala's team trying to negotiate a way to make that happen. Rogan saying, "Oh shit, no way you can have her come on before Trump." Okay, I can have Trump on. I'll schedule him this week. Trump, I changed my mind. You want to come on? Come on. Meanwhile, Spotify's talking to Kamala's camp the whole time, negotiating her visit. And now he can openly talk about the stuff that's going on with that because Trump was on. I don't know if they're going to make it happen or not. I'd really like to see it because it's going to be a train wreck. If Rogan does interview her, it's going to be absolutely neutered, or it's not going to happen. So I'm 50-50 on it. I still think she'll do it, but it's not going to be if she does do it, it's not going to be a Joe Rogan Experience episode. That's not what it's going to be. It's going to be a strange interview by a non-reporter that has to ask the questions that they negotiated that he's allowed to ask. And that's not even close to doing Joe Rogan. I don't even know why. It's dumb. This whole thing's dumb. I just wanted to put a bow on this whole Rogan prediction I made. I'm even going to stop the video here because it's not even worth hearing Crystal Ball's opinion. Everything she says is just, I don't know. I've been listening to Breaking Points a lot, just trying to get prepared to do this little news video I do every day, and it's just I don't know. I'm having trouble listening to her. Everything she says is it's hard to hear. It's dumb. The dude he's fairly reasonable. I don't mind listening to him too much, but Crystal, I gotta watch some stuff on like I'll do some videos on The View and Rachel Maddow and some of that stuff. Maybe see what some of their takes are. I'm sure it's even worse. I'm trying to stay closer to the middle with some of the new stuff that I show compared to just showing their ridiculous left stuff. I don't know. I guess maybe I should. Maybe that's what I should do. Maybe I should do a dive on some of these bigger name people that are absolutely ridiculous. I don't know. Tell me what you think. If you think Kamala is going to come on, do you think Rogan really truly changed his mind about having Trump on, or whether the Spotify's spurring them to have Kamala on? Like I think, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't think anything about it. Just let it happen and go from there. Oh well. I don't know. It's tough for me to now that I've been watching so much of this stuff. It's tough to hear some of their opinions, especially whenever they're so disingenuous. That's probably my biggest problem. I don't mind hearing opinions that I disagree with. It's whenever I hear it from someone and I read people for a living. It's part of my job is reading you and reading what you say and every facial expression you make, every nonverbal cue you give me, I pick up on. So it's very easy for me to discern whether or not someone's saying something they actually believe or whether they're saying something that they're supposed to say, that they're scripted to say, and whether they're acting or not. So it's really tough for me to watch paid actors take bags of money to say they're voting for Kamala, like Eminem getting up on stage. Meanwhile, they got 20 Diddy tapes on him, and there's nothing he can do but get up there and say, "I'm voting for Kamala. I'm gonna vote for." He's voting for the, yeah, Eminem's voting for the rights for abortion. I guess I don't know. I don't see how you could vote for Kamala and your sole issue is abortion. I don't see how the number one thing on your radar is abortion. I just don't understand. If anyone's main issue for this election is abortion, please explain to me how that's your number one issue and how you can say women's rights, you're voting for women's rights, and really the only thing that's on the table is abortion. I don't know, just make it make sense. If you want to kill your baby, I don't care, kill your babies. It doesn't make a difference to me. I just don't want to pay for it. And if taxpayers are paying for it and any tax money goes towards that type of stuff at all, then we have a say in it. So you're bringing us into your business. I don't want to be in your business. But whenever you kill babies and it's subsidized, then we have to talk about it, unfortunately. But if that's your only issue for this election, I don't know. I think you need to get out more. You don't have a reason to vote for her. You end up just sounding like this.
You like me heavy.